the counsel of our fathers.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
National flags to fly at half-mast in honor of late Chief of Staff and other fallen heroes.
Accident Investigation Bureau to ascertain cause of military plane crash in Kaduna.
Two persons die and dozens on admission following tanker explosion in Kano.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on tributes to the departed military heroes, plus a review of the France-Africa Finance Summit.
Now, the nation is still in mourning following the sudden death of the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Ibrahim Tahiru, and 10 other military officers and men in the plane crash in Kaduna last Friday evening. Already, President Buhari has directed that the national flag be flown at half-mast in all public buildings and residences in their honor.
Quite a dark moment for Nigeria, Notable. Now, the Chief of Army Staff was to be the special guest of honor at the passing out parade of new recruits of the Nigerian Army in Kaduna. But to the tragic twist, that Saturday turned out to be, rather sadly, the funeral for the Army Chief and other military officers who were victims of the plane crash in Kaduna, which the Defense Headquarters has, in the meantime, attributed to bad weather in its initial reaction to the mishap.
And tragic indeed, Kinsley. The fallen heroes who died in active service were buried on Saturday with full military honors amidst tears and wailing from colleagues, family members, and other sympathizers who thronged the National Military Cemetery in Abuja to pay their last respects.
The Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic, President Muhammadu Buhari, expressed deep sadness over the air crash that claimed the lives of Lieutenant General Ibrahim Tahiru and other military officers. He described them as heroes who paid the ultimate price for peace and security in the land. In the President's words, "The crash is one mortal blow to our underbelly at a time our armed forces are poised to end the security challenges facing the country."
A mortal blow indeed, Kinsley, and the grounds well of opinion is that the fight against insurgency and associated crimes, that is, be sustained and fought to a reasonable conclusion, if only to honor the memory of all our fallen heroes and ensure that they did not die in vain.
Well, this is why segments of Good Morning Nigeria today will focus on tributes to the nation's fallen heroes and matters arising, bearing in mind that this is the third military plane crash between February and May this year alone, and sadly claiming 20 lives in total.
Well, sad indeed, Kinsley. Well, for the second part of the program, we shall look at the recently concluded France-Africa Summit, France-Africa Finance Summit, that is, and discuss the key takeaways, especially for Nigeria, from that summit where President Muhammadu Buhari made a strong case for debt relief for African countries, as well as access to vaccines to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic.
We will have joining us in the course of the program a number of cabinet ministers who accompanied President Muhammadu Buhari to Paris last week to shed light on the outcome of the summit. It's on that note we would like to welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. I am Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Yusuf Nadabo Usman. I'm joining Kingsley to welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria. We are live on the network service of the NTA and from the nation's capital, Abuja. Our complimentary segments of newspaper review, business, and others will come up in the course of the program. In the meantime, let's join Nolan Abel-Ame for the morning news. Good morning, Nolan.
Good morning, Nadabo and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the news. To honor the memory and services of the late Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Ibrahim Atahiru, as well as 10 senior military and service members who lost their lives in the plane crash on Friday, 21st May 2021, President Muhammadu Buhari has directed that the national flag should be flown at half-mast in all public buildings, facilities and official residences with effect from Monday, 24th to Wednesday, 26th May 2021. Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, who conveyed the President's directive in a statement, said the President has similarly approved a work-free day for members of the armed forces on Monday, 24th May 2021. Meanwhile, the Accident Investigation Bureau has been mandated by the Nigerian Air Force to lead the investigation into the crash of a military aircraft that occurred on Friday in Kaduna, in which the Chief of Army Staff and 10 other military officers died. A statement by the AIB General Manager, Public Affairs Tunji Oketumbi, stated that the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder from the accidented Beechcraft 350 aircraft have been recovered and investigation has commenced. Investigators will download and analyze vital information contained in the recorders at the AIB's world-class flight safety laboratory in Abuja. The federal government has declared 90 travelers who recently visited or arrived from India, Turkey, and Brazil as potential health hazards to the society for violating Nigeria's COVID-19 travel protocols and evading the mandatory 7-day quarantine for persons arriving from restricted countries. The Presidential Steering Committee, PSC, on COVID-19 in a statement signed by its chairman and secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, listed the violators as persons of interest who pose considerable danger to public health. They comprise 63 Nigerians, 26 Indians, and 1 Danish citizen who arrived to Nigeria through the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Lagos, and Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, between May 8 and 15, 2021. The PSC says the violators must, within 48 hours of this notice, transport themselves safely to the nearest state public health departments for immediate evaluation and also call the Port Health Services, Federal Minister of Health, for further directions. In the meantime, 40 new COVID-19 infections have been recorded nationwide within the last 24 hours, bringing the country's total confirmed cases to 166,019. The Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, records show that among the new infections, Lagos has 29, Abia and Ogun have 3 cases each, Kano 2, while Kaduna, Plateau and Rivers recorded 1 case apiece. Active cases nationwide stand at 7,476. Total discharged so far are 156,476, while the death toll remains 2,067. On a sad note, 2 lives were lost 28 others currently on admission out of over 60 people caught up in a petroleum tanker explosion at a filling station in Sharada Industrial Area of Kano. 8 men of the State Fire Service were also involved in the incident.
Currently, we have 28 patients on admission. 8 of them are members of the fire service, while the other 18 were the passers-by and those that went to the incident site for sightseeing. Out of that 28, 2 had sustained fractures, and all of them are receiving treatment.
We are unable to control the situation. The fire become under control by our firemen.
The Red Cross was informed through our usual contact. People call us and our volunteers was able to rush and offer assistance.
And that concludes the morning news. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Kinsley and Adabo after this break. I am Nolin Ebel Ame. Good morning.
Recently, both the president and vice president demonstrated leadership by being among the first Nigerians to have the AstraZeneca vaccine administered to them on live TV for all in the country to see. Subsequently, many federal ministers, political leaders, and members of the Presidential COVID-19 Task Force have publicly taken the vaccine. To follow in the footsteps of President Buhari and Vice President Oshibaja. To obtain it yourself, please go to the NPHCDA website. There is a link to click on in order to register and schedule your vaccination. In the meantime, please continue to wear face masks, wash your hands frequently, use hand sanitizer, and observe social distancing. This message was brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
City Hawks. Let's go, guys.
Babe.
Yeah.
Would you please turn on your hotspot?
Okay, there you go. My lady, play this ball. Hey, hold this guy down.
Password, please.
0808.
Babe.
Yeah.
You have a message.
From who? Maybe. Read it out now. Read it out to my ears.
Free your mind with Airtel Smart Talk and enjoy calls to all networks at a flat rate of 11 kobo per second. Dial *315# to join.
Fine girl. Can I have your phone, man?
Airtel, the smartphone network.
You clean your teeth every morning, but that fresh breath feeling just doesn't last. The answer? Easy. You keep your teeth strong and healthy and give your mouth long-lasting fresh breath with new Oral-B 2-in-1 toothpaste. It helps strengthen your teeth and gives you long-lasting fresh breath.
So fresh, still fresh, and still fresh.
Stay strong, stay fresh. New Oral-B toothpaste for strong teeth and long-lasting fresh breath.
It's the dawn of a new era on NTA's flagship program, the Sports Parliament, revitalized with lots of varieties, including feedback responses from viewers. Sports Parliament, the weekly sports show that exposes all the intrigues in the Nigerian sports sector and projects an agenda on the way forward for Nigerian sports. On NTA every Thursday at 10:30 p.m., running for 1 whole hour, discussing sports. The parliamentarians are more committed than ever to enlighten the viewers as the Sports Parliament takes it to a whole new level on the floor of the House. Keep a date with the Sports Parliament as motions are moved every Thursday on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, with his gavel to harmonize sports resolutions. The House have it.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Next is business news with Kunle Adeyeye.
Since all aspects of the economy have gone digital and most job seekers are ICT compliant, taking solace in information and communication technologies has been seen as a good antidote to unemployment. Engaging Nigeria's youthful population in areas like wireless networks, cell phones, computers, software, middleware, video conferencing, social networking, and other media applications will stimulate the economy. An investment promotion expert, Ogbonna Okuku, said government programs and policies, including enabling environments, are the basic requirements to make it function effectively.
This entire disruption that is happening in the world, things have to get better. You have to think of better ways to get things done. And technology is the only way, and it still remains the only way.
He remarked that the federal government's partnership with Microsoft, which will eventually engage 5 million Nigerians, is a good development. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Many thanks, Kunle, for the business package. Coming up next is the newspaper review.
All right, my colleague Nadabo and I will take the papers in turn and then, of course, discuss one or two of the stories trending. Bayatebe is off today. All right, Nadabo.
Okay, let's get started with the Nation newspaper. Above the masthead, we have the story on page 4. NDLEA intercepts 8 billion naira cocaine at Lagos Airport. That's on page 4. Then on page 33, there is a story on COVID-19 which says 90 travelers from India, Brazil, Turkey are wanted. Between pages 17 and 24 is this business news, which is why NPC may raise interest rate. And then on page 8, GDP rose by 0.51% in the first quarter. Below the masthead, we have a story, Autumn to Benue people, get Dane gun for self-defense. The details of that on page 6. And then President gives soldiers a day off. Buhari rather phones General Atahiru's widow. Details of that on page 7. The main story and the big story on the Nation's newspaper today is Southwest APC leaders reject secession agitation. And you have Tinubu, Akande, Akiru Nadi, Bajabia Mila, Oshoba. Governors OK ban open grazing. Have details of that on page 6. And there are two other stories right there. We can see gunmen abduct father and son on page 4, and 64 injured in Kano tanker explosion still on page 4. At the bottom of the page, on page 8, NAFDAC destroys fake product in Northeast. And on page 8 still, Niger community gates VVF Center. All Kingsley?
Okay, let's also take a look at the front page of the Punch newspaper. Beginning from the headlines above the name flag. National Assembly to bar NPA, NCC, NIMASA from spending revenue. That's on page 32. GDP grows by 0.51% in quarter one. Economy is still weak, experts lament. Baron caught with 8 billion naira cocaine in Lagos offers $24,500 bribe. That's page 4. Malami, Emefiele and others appear before reps today over looted assets probe. That's page 8. Bello begins Southwest youth mobilization ahead presidential bid. Saudi Arabia issues 60,000 person limit and age restriction for Hajj. Details are on page 22. Well, the lead story is on the big story that occurred at the weekend. It comes with a kicker. COAS, that's Chief of Army Staff, and 10 others' death. Air Force to decide on military jets after probe. We won't rush to take decisions that will hamper our operations. That's according to the Nigerian Air Force. And Nigeria Air Force plane crashes claim 33 officers and 11 aircraft in 6 years. And the photographs there on the front page are from the DRC, that's Democratic Republic of Congo, where the residents of Goma were seen, of course, taken off from their homes following the eruption of Mount Nyiragongo. That's boiling lava all over the place. The photographs were also over the international media, as well as video footage from the Congo. Bandits demand 100 million naira to free 13 Niger residents. Naked corpse of ex-Uni Abuja female student recovered from drain. In Borno, Rep sacks aid for hailing Shekau's suicidal death. Borno Rep sacks aid for hailing Shekau's suicidal death. Rep tackles Bauchi governor over suspension as traditional title holder. And 2 policemen lose their lives in Zamfara, AK-47 rifles stolen. Police begin search as gunmen abduct FCT father and son. And herdsmen killed 5 in Taraba community after peace meeting. Details on page 11. All right, so Honorable, these are the headlines that you and I have both read from the Punch and the Nation newspaper. Clearly, the big story, as we said, happened on Friday evening, unfortunately, and that was the crash of the aircraft belonging to the Nigerian Air Force, and it claimed the lives of the Chief of Army Staff and 10 other officers, a number of them generals. Pretty sad development.
Yeah, really sad indeed.
Yes,
it's a big loss to the nation. That's why we really want to dedicate some portion of Good Morning Nigeria today to that.
That's right.
And see how we'll be able to really mourn to alongside families and friends, colleagues, and indeed Nigerians, the death of these great people who died in active service.
Yeah, but the president has followed up with a telephone conversation with the widow of the Chief of Army Staff, Mrs. Fatih Atahiru. And the First Lady has also paid a visit to the family of the Chief of Staff and expressed condolences through her to the other widows and other families who lost their loved ones in this very tragic incident that took place in Kaduna. But there's something that I am a bit concerned about, Nadabo, and I will tell you this.
What is that?
Well, we all know the uses of the social media, and we also know the harm that the social media could occasion from time to time. There was an initial report that the wife of the Chief of Army Staff was on the same aircraft with him. And later, it was denied that she wasn't on the aircraft. And of course, almost immediately, there were the stories that came out to say, oh, no, she wasn't on the aircraft. So that one was immediately taken care of. But what I find a bit worrisome, let me give some benefit of the doubt to those who followed the chain of events. Because I was asleep sometime between 7 p.m. and just before 9. So it was when I woke up, I was going through my phone, and I saw the stories about the crash in the first instance. And I said, look, wow, let me find out what has happened. So I was going through the stories, and it was reported that the crash took place around about 6 p.m., which is to say this was now about 3 hours later. By about 10 p.m. or so, the names of the persons who were on board the aircraft, who were said to have died, had already been published online. And you gave the manifest of the names of the officers. I would have thought, yes, there is a need to release information that for a tragedy of this nature, and indeed, tragedies with their air crashes involving military officers in other parts of the world, and officers also lose their lives in battle. But the advisable thing would be to say that the names would not be released until their next of kin had been contacted. So I would ask myself to say, look, between 6 p.m. when the incident occurred and 10 p.m., 4 hours, you had contacted the next of kin of the officers,
Ideally,
and then suddenly, you released the manifest. So, because it was shocking, if you ask me. I mean, I didn't know any of the officers personally, except for the chief of staff, who had been a guest on Good Morning Nigeria sometime in the past. But for family members who would be getting to know about that incident by just reading it to say, oh, these are the names of the officers, the shock would be difficult to manage, at least in some cases, although we do not know of any collateral incidents arising from that. What do you think?
Well, it's really shocking. It should be shocking in the sense that you can't just share the death of maybe a loved one on air or either in social media and some other, medium like that. But of course, social media as it is, it's one avenue which most of us really, or all of us, I should say, have that, negative feeling about in terms of this kind of releases and information. Everybody's a journalist now. And I don't know where they got the information from, but all the same, it shouldn't have been that. And then, Nigerians should be wary of this kind of information and don't add more fuel onto the fire as such in this regard.
That's right. But that's right. But it was a good thing in terms of, again, chain of command and the communication. The Minister of Defense went to the villa to brief the president. So look, this is what had happened. But it's suddenly to get the names. As I said, by 10 p.m. or thereabout, you already saw the names, and I was asking myself, I'm just so that we do not pray for this kind of occurrence. No. But usually, when service personnel pass on, the next of kin will be informed. And informing the next of kin, in my opinion, ordinarily would go beyond simply picking up your telephone and saying, hello, are you so and so? Okay, your husband was on the flight, the flight crashed, and there are no survivors. Yeah, sometimes it will require physical visitation, a delegation. It will. So that you can manage the reaction of the family members. A pretty sad development, and we wish them eternal rest. Wish them eternal rest. It's tragic, and to look at the numbers now, 11 aircraft in 6 years, and 3 aircraft this year alone. There's no cost you can place on the human life in the first instance.
There is no cost.
There's no cost. There's no cost. I mean, a man who is a father, a man who is a son, a man who is a brother, who is an uncle, it plays a lot of roles in society. And a man who is also a defense personnel plays a lot of roles. You can't place any cost on their lives.
Indeed, we cannot.
Yeah, we cannot. But we also have to ask ourselves, going forward, look, when you lose one aircraft, you know how much it is. This is not an aircraft lost in combat. So these are some of the issues.
We'll be discussing on this later. I mean, just in some few moments from now, so that we hear much more about this.
That's right, not at
all. We'll now call for a break, and then, of course, we'll be back in a moment with the continuation of discussion on Good Morning Nigeria, talking about this tragic loss to the nation. Stay with us.
Here today, gone tomorrow. 'Cause you volatile like the water. And you promise what you don't know. Sometimes it's right and then
Smartphone Network.
Kehinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Taiyi suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around, or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
Ovaltine, 3-in-1. It has great taste.
Big day ahead.
Yummy, yummy, full of nourishment and vitality. Active bodies and shock minds. Ovaltine, 3-in-1. 3-in-1. Ovaltine, 3-in-1.
New Ovaltine 3-in-1. Smart choice for smart kids.
When times are tough, we know that as a mother, one thing you should never compromise on is your family's oral health, because they deserve the best. Oral-B, all-round protection. It's great value. It protects your mouth from harmful bacteria and also protects you against tooth holes and gum problems, which can lead to tooth loss. It strengthens your family's teeth and gives them all-round protection. So remember, protect their future. Oral-B for healthier, stronger teeth in just 1 week.
My name is Dr. Faisal Shuaib. I am the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. Earlier today, I took my first shot of the AstraZeneca vaccine. Despite all of the delays, all of the doubts, here we are, Nigerians can finally access the vaccines. I hope that Nigerians will come out and get this vaccine, because these vaccines are safe, they're effective, and they truly work. Over the course of the next few weeks, we have to continue wearing face masks. We have to do social distancing, but I know eventually once we're able to get herd immunity, then we'll be able to stop all of these non-pharmaceutical interventions. To get the vaccination, you should go to the MPHCDA website. There's a link on there that you click and you can register and schedule exactly where you want to get your vaccine.
My culture preaches peace. My culture preaches peace. My culture preaches peace. 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 My culture preaches peace.
Even our religion
Preaches peace.
If our culture preaches peace, remember your culture. Use your voter's card. Vote peacefully
And wisely. We are one.
This message is from the National Council for Arts and Culture.
Well, it's still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Our first conversation this morning bothers from the last Friday's tragic plane crash in Kaduna, which claimed the life of the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Ibrahim Atahiru, and 10 military officers who were with him on that ill-fated flight.
Now, the other officers included the Acting Chief of Military Intelligence, Brigadier General Abdulkadir Kulia, Chief of Staff to the late Chief of Army Staff, Brigadier General Mohammed Idris Abdulkadir. There was also Brigadier General Olatunji Lukman Olainka, as well as the aide-de-camp to the Chief of Army Staff, Major Lawal Aliu Hayat, and Major Nura Hamza.
And others were the pilot of the ill-fated aircraft, Flight Lieutenant Taiwo Olufemi Osoni, Flight Lieutenant Alfred Ayodeji Olufade, and Sergeant Opeyemi Isaiah Adishina, and Sergeant Umar Saidu, and aircraftman Olamide Matthew Oyedepo.
Already, President Muhammadu Buhari has directed that the national flag should be flown at half-mast on all public buildings and residences in honor of the fallen heroes. And joining us now from our Joyce Network Center for this conversation, we would like to welcome Brigadier General John Temlong, who was the first commander of the Multinational Joint Task Force, and also former President, Alumni Association of the National Defense College. General Temlong, pretty sad morning, but regardless, we welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria.
And with us in the studio here in Abuja, we have our regular security analyst, Dr. Kabir Adamu. It's a delight once again to have you on Good Morning Nigeria, Kabir. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right, I was just wondering, General Temlong, if you can hear me, and we also hope we can get your audio. You're joining us from our Just Network studios. The president has described the Kaduna crash, as it were, as a mortal blow to the armed forces. This is indeed a very sad occasion. The armed forces have also been given today off, being the 24th of May, and flags are to fly at half-mast. Can you try to capture for us the gravity of this loss of not just the Chief of Army Staff, but also the intelligence chief and other officers in the way and manner that it happened on Friday evening?
Well, my heart goes out to the families of the deceased officers, to members of the armed forces and Nigerians as a whole. I pray that the good Lord will grant them the fortitude to bear this irreparable loss. It is quite a monumental loss, like the President has said, and to me it's a personal loss because General Atairu himself, I actually inducted him into the Nigerian Defense Academy and posted him to his first company, together with Air Marshal Amao, to Abyssinia Company, which was my erstwhile company, because I saw some good qualities in them, and I thought they should go to the company I went through in the academy. Be that as it may be, you know, there was a change of guard in January this year, and General Atairu and the officers who are working with him, especially the Chief of Military Intelligence, and all his staff have been hands on deck to make sure that they reverse the ugly security situation in this country. He is actually getting a grip of it. He has understood the problems. He has started putting all the measures that he put in place to actually contain the situation. I'm glad even his predecessor attested to that. The good qualities in him was that he had a very good listening ears. He could consult widely. He could talk to some of us who are either his instructors or who had commanded him in the past, and to seek for advice. And so you could see it was a broad-based approach to fighting the insurgency that he was conducting. A very good team player, and you could see that all his officers were carried along to do what he was doing. He had a good grasp. He had the energy, he had the drive, and he had the passion to do what he was given. He was doing everything he could to excel and to make sure that he put this situation behind him. And I'm sure before, if he were alive, you would have started seeing positive changes in another 1 or 2 months, and probably by September, we would have been home and clean and dry. But be that it may be as it is, the Lord knows and has given us and has taken him away. The army is, the armed forces work as a team. They only have the leadership, gives the direction, gives the guidance, and take the ultimate decision, and the buck stops on his table. But there are other players in the team who have been working and planning with him. There is the commander on the field there, who too has been planning with his staff and has been receiving guidance from the army headquarters, from the chief, to carry out what he's supposed to do. And so there might be a vacuum per se, but if they really work hard and continue to press on with his vision and what he wanted to achieve, we'll be able to get ourselves back on track as quickly as possible. But it is a monumental loss. It is something that we will not take it granted lightly. with the number of officers that have been lost in one fell swoop, it's quite tragic, especially the senior leadership of the army. It's something that it will take some time for us to get over it. But with the flexibility built in the training of military officers, they will be able to overcome it as quickly as possible. It's quite tragic, very, very tragic. I pray that we don't have these sort of things again. But definitely, we have to move as quickly as possible because the country continues. The military have an adage that soldier goes, soldier come, the barracks remains. We lost soldiers in the war. Even on a daily basis, sometimes we lost officers and men in the unit, but you don't have to stop fighting. You continue fighting. When your colleague is hit by a riot, you call in the medics to evacuate and you continue advancing. You don't go back and retreat. No, you press on to meet your objective. And that's why it's something that we have given our lives for it. And we pray that their lives will not have gone in vain, because they died in the line of duty with their boots on, not sleeping somewhere or running away as cowards, but actually died in the line of duty, and that's the ultimate. You pay for your country. And that is the price for joining the armed forces. Sometimes it beats me hollow when you see Nigerians not actually looking and appreciating the sacrifices that these men and women do give out for this country. You rightly pointed out about what their families will be feeling, whether they just, is it announced to them, or you have to go and this thing. And that is why we say in the army that the toughest job in the army is the army wife. Because the wives carry the real brunt. Because while we're out there fighting, they just don't know what is going on. And they are always tense up. They are always with their hearts in their hands. The children look up to them as father and mother. They have to do all this, and you can imagine when the news was broken to these families, and you saw how they were at the Senate at the National Cemetery. You saw the state and mood they were inside. Quite beautiful.
Yeah, really quite beautiful indeed. And of course, that is one tragic loss to a nation, one too much and too many. Dr. Kabiru, how would you describe the late Chief of Army Staff and other fallen heroes, especially in relation to their contributions to the fight against insurgency and banditry in this country, given what really happened?
Thank you. Let me align myself with General Tenglong by extending my heartfelt condolences to the families of the deceased military personnel, the entire military structure, and the nation as a whole. Now, having said that, as an outsider, there are a couple of visible things that emerged over the last 4 months that would give us an indication of what General Attahiru's leadership meant for the army, and then, of course, by extension, the military. The country is currently faced with a couple of existential threats. Number one among them is the terrorism, especially in the northeast, and then banditry. Now, just to put this in context, the military is deployed in about 34 states of the Federation at the moment, and the army, the unit in the military, is spearheading that deployment more or less, even though with the support and participation of both the Air Force and the Navy in certain regions. But in terms of strength, in terms of number, the Army is playing that lead role. And now this is the Chief of Army Staff who is giving direction, both strategic and operational, for this deployment in 34 states. And then unfortunately, in one fell swoop, unexpectedly, he dies. So definitely there is a gap. Now, in terms of the visible effort that he has made in the 4 months that he led the army, in the Northeast, as an example, he changed the name of Operation Lafia Doli For those who don't understand Hausa, Lafiya Dole means peace by force. He changed it by all means. He changed it to Operation Haɗin Kai, which means coming together. So to an extent, removing the force out of the operation and saying that, look, come, let's work together. Let's find a way out of this. Generally telling the residents of the Northeast Lake Chad Basin that we're here to help you, to support you, bring this to an end. And we're not imposing on you something that you don't like, which philosophically speaks about the civil-military relations that we've been speaking about for a while. So that's number one. Number two, he changed the super camp strategy. You would recall that from late 2018 into 2019, as a result of the constant attack on military operational bases, there was the hue and cry that the forward operating bases should be changed into super camps, and it was changed. Now, when he emerged as Chief of Army Staff, he reverted back to that strategy of forward operating bases. And the objective of that is really to provide additional protection for residents. So clearly, a man who understood the plight of the people and wanted to reduce the effect of terrorism on the residents, on the people, showing clearly a patriot who wanted to reduce the deaths that we're seeing. Just to put it in context, as at date, about 35,000 thereabout, depending on what number you want to go to, have been killed. A man who wanted to reduce that number. The second point, which is absolutely important, is banditry. He also understood the significance of the effect of banditry on the nation. And from all indications, he had gone around almost all the entire states in the northwest and north central to get an understanding of the challenges affecting the army in battling banditry. And he was in the process of deploying a strategy to quell that. And then unfortunately, this accident happened. So a big loss, unfortunately.
Part of what we had heard, at least since the new service chiefs came on, was that there was now greater synergy amongst the services in the fight, not just against insurgency, but indeed combating other issues that now engage the attention of the armed forces, banditry, kidnapping, and all that. That's quite a unique development. I heard and I saw the Chief of Defense Staff, General Leo Irabo, give a quotative remark at the funeral, urging the soldiers who are alive to carry on, just along the same line that General Temlong was saying earlier. So, but this will also require support from the civil population, because sometimes we appear not to recognize the harm that our men and women face on the front lines. This, of course, was clearly in the line of duty.
Exactly. And I think this is something that perhaps, depending on what happens, who takes over, whether he's able to continue with what late General Atahiru has started, would play a key role in terms of how we bring the two major issues affecting the country at the moment, that's terrorism and banditry. What General Atahiru tried to do is to bring the military closer to the people. In other words, get the buy-in of the local population. And the importance of this is in intelligence, where the local population, the people are able to feel the pulse of the military, understand what the military is doing, then they will be able to support the generation of intelligence. And I think it's absolutely important. The statement made by General Irabo and whoever it is that is going to take over should understand the value of this. The past idea of using, I would say, only kinetic force, it's gone. It's time that whatever strategy you are bringing must ensure that the civil-military relation is enhanced to the extent where the people are the owners, actually, of the operations, not just an imposition, as it were.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Kabir Adamu. Thank you so much for appearing on this segment of Good Morning Nigeria. It's an emergency, of course, accidents when they happen normally, that's the way it is. And so also is this very segment. So bear with us, the time is too short.
No, it's okay. Thank you for
General John Temlong, we thank you so much for being part of this discussion on, the crash on Saturday. We thank you so much for your perspective. We'll now this program. Stay with us.
Nigerian Microfinance Bank wishes to inform the general public not to give money to anybody disguising as its staff or agent to secure the COVID-19 Targeted Credit Facility or AGS MEIS loan. However, a training fee is charged by Accredited Entrepreneurship Development Training Institute, EDIs, for the training and business plan for the AGS MEIS loan. Whenever you are in doubt, please call us at 0901 002 6905. If anyone has collected money to help you get the loan, please lodge a complaint on our whistleblowing portal by sending us an email on whistleblower@nmfb.com.ng. Nigerian Microfinance Bank also wishes to inform the general public that the COVID-19 Targeted Credit Facility disbursed by our bank is a loan and beneficiaries must pay back with interest. The COVID-19 Targeted Credit Facility should not be misconstrued as a grant from the government. Call 094-621-730 or visit www.nmfb.com.ng for more information.
The Council of Our Fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
You clean your teeth every morning, but that fresh breath feeling just doesn't last. The answer? Easy. You keep your teeth strong and healthy and give your mouth long-lasting fresh breath with new Oral-B 2-in-1 toothpaste. It helps strengthen your teeth and gives you long-lasting fresh breath.
So fresh, still fresh, and still fresh.
Stay strong, stay fresh. New Oral-B toothpaste for strong teeth and long-lasting fresh breath.
My name is Nancy Oyedia Orom. I'm AIT correspondent. I've been covering the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 the last 1 year. I just took the jab, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, and it was seamless. And I was opportune to take these vaccines with the SGF, the ministers. So I want to use this medium as a journalist for someone who has experienced COVID in the last 1 year. I want to implore media houses, broadcast industries. Let's join hands together to propagate the good information out there for people to believe in these vaccines. That's the only way we can have health immunity and also achieve the projection and target of Nigeria come 2022. Well, I must implore all Nigerians to go out there, register on the Primary Healthcare Development Agency website. These vaccines are free for all Nigerians. Go to the website, register. It is free for you and I.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA. Life can be very eventful. We curiously expect things to happen, even when we don't know what. Our human nature makes us like and repost lots of information. Some are unverified, inciting anger and hate. Sometimes innocently, other times the urge to break it first. This, in most cases, has caused destruction in many nations.
It's still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. As a prompt for our second conversation, which is a review of the France-Africa Finance Summit, let's listen to this backgrounder by our correspondent Ikene Indilue.
Although the mortality rate due to the COVID-19 pandemic in Africa is not as high as other regions of the world, the economic impact on the continent is quite severe. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, warned that Africa faces a shortfall in funds needed for future development with a financial gap of $290 billion. To address this issue, French President Emmanuel Macron hosted African leaders and chiefs of global financial institutions in Paris for the France-Africa Finance Summit. The conference largely focused on two issues: minimizing the negative effects of COVID-19 pandemic on African countries and, on the other hand, assisting Sudan to wipe out a $60 billion foreign debt bill by securing relief and investments. President Muhammadu Buhari, who was in attendance with other African leaders, also engaged in various bilateral meetings on the sidelines of the summit. Top among the president's engagement is a meeting with the French President Emmanuel Macron, where he appealed for more coronavirus vaccines for Nigeria. The two leaders also agreed to cooperate in fighting insecurity in the Lake Chad Basin area and the entire Sahel. Also at the summit, President Buhari observed that many African countries were already experiencing debt distress, and the debt service suspension by France and the G20 was not far-reaching enough. He therefore called on European countries and global financial institutions to consider reducing the devastating effects of COVID-19 pandemic on African economies by restructuring debt portfolios and providing complete debt relief. President Buhari has since returned to Abuja after the 4-day summit. Now, what are the positives from this summit? What will be the impact on Nigeria's economy, public health, as well as foreign and trade relations? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will be reviewing the outcome of the France-Africa Finance Summit in a moment.
Thank you very much, Ekene, for that backgrounder. Now, joining us to discuss issues arising from that summit, we'll have with us here in the Abuja studios the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Hajia Zainab Ahmed. Pleasure to have you
Good
again.
Morning.
Good morning,
Good
Nigeria.
morning, Nigeria. Good morning.
Also here with us in the studios is the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, His Excellency Geoffrey Onyama. Honorable Minister, delighted to have you this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
And joining us, from Lagos at the Lagos Network Center is Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Otumba Ni Adebayo. Thank you for joining us, Otumba.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning.
And also joining us via Zoom is the Honorable Minister of Health, Dr. Osagi Ihanire. We thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for joining us.
Good morning to you.
All right, Honorable Ministers, once again, we welcome you to this conversation. We'll begin with the Honorable Minister of Health, who is with us via Zoom. The signals are quite stronger this time. The summit that took place in Paris was a finance summit mostly, but against the background of a global health issue, big one for that matter, which is coronavirus. And one of the major matters arising from coronavirus and the vaccines that have been developed is vaccine nationalism, which has now limited access of many countries, particularly in the developing world, to vaccines that are, in some cases, being warehoused in the advanced countries. What commitments did we get out of this summit with regard to Nigeria's access to COVID-19 vaccines?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. We in Africa have been mentioning for a long time that we stand for equitable distribution of these vaccines. We know they are not made here, and those who produce these vaccines prioritize themselves and their immediate neighbors. But we believe that the COVID-19 plague is a plague of mankind. It's not just a plague of nations, and we have made that point that there should be fair and equitable distribution of these vaccines. So coming to the summit in Paris, that theme was re-echoed, and fortunately re-echoed by many African leaders also, including our own president, who made it very clear that there should be fair distribution. So the message has gone out. We didn't get a very specific commitment out of that meeting, but subsequently we have feelers that Western countries, including the United States, have agreed to release some of their surpluses. As you know, some of these countries have 2, 3, 4, even 5 times the number of vaccines as they have a population, and have vaccinated 20 to 30% of their population, while Africa has barely vaccinated 1.8% of our population. So the balance is very poor, and we hope that they will be able to support the idea of equity and fair access to vaccines.
Honorable Minister, before we, go to other guests, let me put this to you. And looking at this very, scenario and what really exactly were the takeaways from the Paris summit, Macron said African continent should be able to massively and produce vaccines for its own population through technology transfer and lifting career barriers, that is, to intellectual property. And he's saying that against the backdrop of the fact that 40% of Africans are supposed to be vaccinated by the end of 2021. What would you say to this?
About producing vaccines in Africa, that idea has also been brought up by many other groups, including elements within the United Nations, who are promoting the fact that if you have a problem of this nature, we should not look at it nationally, we should look at it globally. This is a global pandemic that's affecting all people. And if countries who produce vaccines, for one reason or the other, want to prioritize themselves, then all continents, at least all regions, should be able to produce vaccines. Problem is that we do not have the technical know-how, so we'll have to have technology transfer. There's also the question of the capital to get going, and that is an issue which banks have to address, who agree to give the support for it, the financial support. And we in Nigeria have an entity called the BioVaccine, which is already partly owned by the federal government, but wasn't actually originally designed for COVID vaccine production, but can easily be adapted to it, except that this company itself is in its infancy, is trying to get its feet on the ground. But we're going to do everything we can to accelerate the strengthening of this company and to get it into action. I have had the privilege of being able to speak with the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Ms. Amina Mohammed, who is ready to support us in that respect. I also had a conversation with Mr. Okonjo-Iweala of the World Trade Organization. We welcome the waiver to intellectual property rights that have been that was announced first by the United States President, and that will only open the door, but it doesn't really bring the product into our country yet until we have a concerted effort. I also had a chat with Mr. Femi Adesina of the African ADB, and who they are all ready to support us in that respect, and also give us a fighting chance when vaccines break us, or when I say us, I mean Africa, that we can take care of our region. So that is the idea. We are strongly in support of that.
Okay, Honorable Minister, you said Mr. Femi Adesina, that's the special advisor to the President on Media and Publicity. Of course, you intended to say Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, who is President of the African Development Bank. I just wanted you, since we have you on this now, just clarify this for Nigerians. Nigeria was relying on India for its supply of the AstraZeneca vaccines, but we know that India has faced its own catastrophic COVID-19 cases. So, the second jabs are supposed to begin this week in Nigeria. When we exhaust that, what will be our sources of supply? That's why I was asking about any specific commitment to release vaccines to Nigeria to continue its rollout?
Yes, one of the very specific asks that our president presented was that France should try to champion the immediate release of surplus vaccines. And the president of France is on record as having said that they should be able to release, I believe it was 5% of their vaccine stock. And he was backed by Prime Minister Boris Johnson. But we're waiting for that to be translated into deed. And a few days ago, President Biden announced that they will have an additional 20 million doses of vaccines add to the 60 they had before, making it 80 million that they are going to make available. But it seems that a lot of that, as I've been told from other sources, is destined for India, where they have a serious problem now. Now, we in Africa don't want to get to the situation that India is in before we start to vaccinate, because you don't get the full advantage. So you want to be prepared before such an outbreak comes in. We are very worried about the outbreak in India seeping into Nigeria because the demographics are very similar, the same youth bulge, and then there is also a great similarity in the favor that you have here for religion and for politics. And you know, those two activities actually precipitated the serious outbreak that India is having now. And the government has also been questioned for exporting vaccines when they should have been vaccinating their own people at the very beginning. So they are now doing that, vaccinating their own citizens with all the vaccines they can get. And that's part of the reason for the shortage we have here. The vaccines, all the vaccines we have ever used here came from India so far. We have not received one single dose from Europe or from America. And we have made it clear to them that if we are friends, we should be seeing that hand of friendship now. They should be giving us vaccines so that we are able to protect our citizens before we get into a very difficult situation, which has already been much predicted. So the question of vaccine production is very, very important and pressing at the moment. And if we have success with some bilateral relationships, we are going to want to talk some of the ambassadors and appeal directly to certain countries to release vaccines to us so that we can continue the vaccination we are doing right now. We want to use the other half of vaccines we have disbursed so far to make second doses. So we have fully immunized. We have about 4 million doses. We want to have about 2 million fully immunized persons. Other countries are in a dilemma because they use all their vaccines for first dose. And now the period of effectiveness is running out. They're looking for second doses and they can't find second doses. So they are afraid of the risk of having to start all over again. So we decided to beat that by, I gave the directive that we use one half for 2 million and then the other half for the other 2 million. So we have at least fully immunized people, and any other dose that comes in will now be applied to other Nigerians. And we hope we get those ones going soon. We want to continue this vaccination exercise without a pause.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. But while that one is going on, Honorable Minister, I remember in the heat of the first wave of COVID-19, there were some encouragements for Nigerians to produce, or rather to come up with vaccines, and efforts have been put in that regard, in that direction, and a lot more have been put forward. And it seems as if with this development, transfer of technology, and of course, lifting all barriers to intellectual property, the question now is on most lips is, have we just jettisoned the local effort? And if no, where are we?
Efforts? Yeah, the local efforts, we have said that there are a lot of Nigerian initiatives to get vaccines and therapeutics, and even diagnostics. Many of them are very useful. They have helped us in the area of diagnostics, for example. Some of the things that we use for laboratory for testing and isolating, or rather identifying COVID-19 are now produced here. But as far as vaccines are concerned, the last count I had were 2 candidates, perhaps even 3 by now, who have vaccines. But the vaccine is a vaccine candidate when it has not yet been tried, tested, and approved. So you need to do clinical trials. The clinical trials will have three phases, 1, 2, and 3. But it's an extremely expensive business, and you need investors. And I asked for an estimate for a single candidate to be tested from through all the phases, and it will cost you nothing less than $1.56 million US, $1.56 million to go through the clinical testing phases. Now, that's a lot of money. And we are looking for people, for investors who can put money into that. And if we find investors, fine. We also have a Nigerian who works outside, who we have had a conversation with him before. He works on vaccines outside the country, and we hope that we are going to be meeting very soon. We are supposed to have a meeting with him to see how far he has gone. Getting sponsorship for developing our vaccines to the point where they can be used on people, on humans, is the stage we are in. We found vaccines that look efficacious and useful in theory. That is to say, they have been tried in many other ways.
All right. Well, we seem to have lost the signal there from the Honorable. Okay, Honorable Minister, we'll thank you in the meantime. We'll of course, try and get back to you before we wrap up the conversation. Thanks a lot one more time for your input into this conversation. Let's come to our studios now in Abuja, where we have the Honorable Minister of Finance, Hajia Zainab, and the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Oyama. And in Lagos, we have Tumbani Adebayo, who is Honorable Minister in charge of MITI, that's Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. Let's begin with the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs. And perhaps on a somewhat provocative note, there have been some commentators on this summit who said, again, this is another gathering of the imperialists and their satellites. Why should we go for such a summit in the first instance? Did the outcome of the summit bear out this acerbic reaction to the summit, or it was well worth it?
No, I think it was definitely well worth it. It was well prepared, and when you look at the participants, I think that really told a story. You know, very often in these kinds of big summits, you get the presidents and they just make statements and they leave. But on this occasion, they made sure that they had the people who had to do the implementation. In other words, the heads of the international financial institutions. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the money to help Africa come out of the financial crisis that has been severely exacerbated by COVID, the debt crisis, and also funding vaccines, you know. And what was very interesting during the summit was how supportive all the leaders of the financial institutions were. You know, the IMF leader was there, you know, the World Bank, the Treasury Secretary of the US, you know, so there's that consensus that is very, very important. And then, of course, in addition to that, you need the political consensus. So, you know, President Macron is very determined, actually. I think he's making this a real cause, you know, for his presidency. And, you know, and has the backing, of course, of the US president, you know, who's spoken on the intellectual property dimension of access to vaccines. And so you have that very important consensus amongst the major political leaders. You have the consensus amongst the heads of the major international financial institutions, and of course you also had the African presidents, you know, who were there. So so it was very much worth it, and I think, well, there was a declaration at the end, and you know, the Honorable Minister of Finance will of course give more information on that. But moving towards, you know, the special drawing rights of the IMF to help to support African finances. And it was interesting because they're talking about, I think, under these special drawing rights, you know, $650 billion. African countries have, I think, 33 billion of that. But they're looking at 100 billion. And they're now talking of some of the other countries that have, surplus drawing rights, making those available to African countries up to, to reach 100 billion. So that really shows a very heartwarming, coalescence of, vision and viewpoints. So, and of course, Mr. President also made a very powerful and trenchant statement at the meeting, first of all showing what we're doing in the country, because a lot of the countries are saying that, yes, if we're going to make all this money available to African countries, we also want to see some financial reforms in those countries and some discipline, fiscal discipline. And Mr. President was able to articulate very clearly the very important measures that we're taking in that vein. So to answer your question, yes, it was worth going.
Honorable Minister, before we let go a little bit, let me just add this to what he said. The France-Africa summit was more or less to cushion the effect of, the devastating effect of COVID-19 on African economies especially. And it seems as if those countries that were selected or that really attended were big countries in Africa, talking about Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, Angola, Rwanda. And these are countries that one will say will be able to at least have the shock absorber to, contain the effects of this virus. And I don't know, how has it been with these very countries and why this selection? Do you see that not as if it's a sort of another scramble for African economies, not for really great help as such?
No, I think they tried to, there were 20 African countries represented, so I think there was a cross-section of African countries, large and small. So I wouldn't say that, there was this attempt, scramble for Africa attempt. No, I think it was fairly well distributed. And, and I think also, the summit really, they're calling it the New Deal. Macron, talks about the New Deal, an echo of the, U.S. New Deal,
right.
And but an African-driven New Deal. And I think that the African presidents there also echoed that they wanted this to be owned by Africa, driven by African countries, and essentially drawing out a roadmap for Africa and now getting friends to key in to that roadmap. And, talking about, for instance, vaccine production on the continent, they already identified 3 countries, I think, that already have the infrastructure, as it were, in place to do that. They talk about Senegal, Kenya, Rwanda, and, and adding others there. So I think, I would say that the good faith is there. I don't think it's a scramble for Africa. I think that there's a genuine recognition that this is a global issue and that requires a global solution and requires global solidarity. And I think that's really what came out of the summit.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Let's bring in now the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. Hajia, did you leave the summit with a bigger wallet or just IOUs?
Let me just say, and thank you for inviting me. There was a lot of work that we had to do before the summit. So before the summit, all African ministers of finance have met a couple of times, including 2 meetings we had the Minister of Finance with they call him Secretary of Finance of France. And what we wanted to do was to zero down the issues that we have, and we have many issues in Africa, to 2, 3, 4. So we ended up with 4. And we had pre-prepared points that we made sure got into the speeches of our president, so that each president was resonating the concerns. So one of the concerns is access to vaccines. So there is less than equitable access to vaccine, and everybody is calling for that equitable access to vaccine. Secondly, relating to vaccine still is the capacity and the need for Africa, not just now but in the future, to be able to produce vaccines within the continent, so that we're not, like now, depending on vaccine supplies coming in from the continent. And then there was a problem of liquidity. All of our countries have been stressed because of the COVID-19 impact. We end up having fiscal crisis, and we ended up having to borrow more than we planned, putting our economies in a very precarious position. We had liquidity issues. So there was the question of addressing our debt. And already this European countries, the G7, had given the DSSI, which some countries took, Nigeria did not take. But we're also asking for restructuring of this debt to expand the repayment periods to make it easy on our fiscal space. And then the issue of fiscal liquidity, which is the reason why the approval was given by the IMF board on the special drawing rights, which is mentioned by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. This SDRs means that we can access initial capital investments that we made into the IMF, but on a loan basis. We're accessing it now to pay it back later. But not only that, because Africa is entitled to about 33.6 billion of the 650 billion SDRs, it's too small. The funding gap for Africa, the assessment we have made, is up to about 450 billion. So these countries have now agreed that they will provide from their own SDRs, they will on-lend to us at very, very simple and low terms, at least 100 billion of those SDRs. And that this money, when it is provided, will be used for health, for education, for climate change, but also for developing and expanding the capacity of our multilateral institutions, such as the African Development Bank, AFREXIM, and other regional and national development finance institutions. That is what will give us resilience for the future, so that when something like this happens again, these institutions are able and ready to be able to provide interventions to our economies. Finally, to enable partnerships between our countries so that we're able to get investors that will come in and invest in producing vaccines and other things. The summit also concentrated a lot about the need to provide financing for the entrepreneurs in our countries, especially the micro, small, medium enterprise, because at the end of the day, that is what brings about resilience in any economy.
Oh, well, thank you, Honorable Minister of Finance. Let's move over to the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Otumba Adebayo. Sorry, we kept you waiting, but all the same, here we are. The special IMF drawing rights by October from rich nations, that is, it's a special allocation of about $100 billion, as the minister said. And of course, with that, there should be, or there would be some, aspects of investment in that regard. Now, tell us, what were the takeaways from the, Africa-France summit in this regard, talking about investment and industry as it relates to Nigeria?
Very much. As has been pointed out by my colleague, the Honourable Minister of Finance, some of that money that is being expected from special drawing rights should rightly go to development finance institutions. And we're hopeful that the Bank of Industry will be one of the institutions that would benefit from these funds. And on the expressed interest in continuing to invest in Nigeria and to set up new investments in Nigeria. And of particular note is one of the big IOCs, Total, which they met, the top executives, chief executives and top executives met with Mr. President, and they expressed their intention to continue to invest in Nigeria. They intend to expand their operations in Nigeria. Unlike some of the other IOCs who have started expressing an interest in leaving Nigeria, they are determined to stay in Nigeria, invest more in Nigeria. Apart from Total Nigeria, there were some other companies that met with Mr. President, and one of the issues that we made plain to them is that anything that they're going to come and do in Nigeria, that what Nigeria is interested in now is that when you invest in Nigeria or when you come to get or you're interested in Nigeria purchasing your goods and equipment, that you should find a way to invest in Nigeria by setting up the companies that will produce these goods, because Nigeria is interested in making sure that we get employment opportunities for the mass unemployed youth that we have in our country. And this was made plain to them by Mr. President, especially this company, Airbus, they expressed an interest in coming to supply helicopters to our military forces, and it was made clear to them that any interest of such Nigeria would be more keen on patronizing companies that actually produce and manufacture here in Nigeria. There was a company that was of particular interest to us. There's a Nigerian who had studied all his life in France. He did his NYSC in Nigeria, I think in 1982, and went back to France, and he set up a company there called Donaflex. This is Dr. Donatos Nwokoye. His company manufactures spare parts for the automobile industry, and he expressed an interest in doing business with Nigeria. And we assured him that we are prepared to work with him. I will be introducing him. I've told him that he should come to Nigeria. I've invited him to come home. I'll be introducing him to the Chief Executive of National Automotive and Design and Development Company here in Nigeria. And we will work with him to see how we can assist him to set up a manufacturing plant in Nigeria, and also assist him with his interest in setting up a training institute for people to learn the automotive trade here in Nigeria. So one thing that came out of that summit with regards to investment is that there is a major interest in people have a major interest to come and invest in Nigeria. People have a major interest in the Nigerian economy. You must remember that Nigerian economy is one that has a very, very big market, the largest market in Africa. We have 200 million people, and that is in that market that people are interested in. And we are making sure, we want to make sure that anybody who is going to benefit from our market, it must add to what we have, and that is by setting up their companies here in Nigeria.
Well, Honorable Minister, thank you very much for your response. One of the salient issues that emerged from the summit has to do with what was reported to be perhaps the setting up of a guarantee scheme or the pledge of a sovereign guarantee for foreign investors who will be coming into Africa. And this is on account of what is often referred to as continent risk, or more particularly for us in Nigeria, country risk assessment, oftentimes very poor. How do we intend to take advantage of this? I'm asking because from time to time we do hear of schemes intended to benefit Africa, and in the end, Nigeria will end up just being analysts. AGOA is one of such instances by the U.S. So what are we doing on this occasion to say, well, these are potentially viable areas for investment, take advantage of it, and then, of course, if you're a foreign investor from Europe or elsewhere, as President Macron has indicated, you get a guarantee from your country.
To repeat the question, I didn't get the beginning of that question, please.
Okay. I understand our engineers are saying that we're going on a short break. When we come back from that break, I will rephrase my question.
Dersal Microfinance Bank wishes to inform the general public not to give money to anybody disguising as its staff or agent to secure the COVID-19 Targeted Credit Facility, or AGS MEIS loan. However, a training fee is charged by Accredited Entrepreneurship Development Training Institute, EDIs, for the training and business plan for the AGS MEIS loan. Whenever you are in doubt, please call us at 0901 002 6905. If anyone has collected money to help you get the loan, please lodge a complaint on our whistleblowing portal by sending us an email on whistleblower@nmfb.com.ng. Dersal Microfinance Bank also wishes to inform the general public that the COVID-19 Targeted Credit Facility disbursed by our bank is a loan and beneficiaries must pay back with interest. The COVID-19 Targeted Credit Facility should not be misconstrued as a grant from the government. Call 094-621-730 or visit www.nmfb.com.ng for more information.
Recently, both the President and Vice President demonstrated leadership by being among the first Nigerians to have the AstraZeneca vaccine administered to them on live TV for all in the country to see. Subsequently, many federal ministers, Political leaders and members of the Presidential COVID-19 Task Force have publicly taken the vaccine to follow in the footsteps of President Buhari and Vice President Oshibaja. To obtain it yourself, please go to the NPHCDA website. There is a link to click on in order to register and schedule your vaccination. In the meantime, please continue to wear face masks, wash your hands frequently, use hand sanitizer, and observe social distancing. This message was brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're returning to the Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Otumba Niyi Adebayo, who is in our Lagos Network Center. Honorable Minister, I was asking, I said one of the issues that emerged from the summit was the pledge of, if you like, sovereign guarantees for investors who are coming into Africa on account of the country or the continent risk often associated with such investments. And I'm asking, how prepared are we to take advantage of this, to make ourselves more attractive to these potential investors? And if so, what are the areas that we are opened up for these investors on account of this pledge of guarantee to those who might be coming in?
Thank you very much. Well, one thing that I can assure you that we are ready. We are awaiting these investors. As you may be aware, and I've said it on numerous occasions, we are in the process of reviewing our Nigerian Industrial Revolution Plan. And a lot of effort and a lot of funding has gone into the setting up of special economic zones. We have 7 special economic zones that we're working on at the moment. We're trying to make sure we provide electricity to these zones to make it suitable for manufacturers who are interested in coming to set up their manufacturing plants here in Nigeria. As you're aware, Nigeria has ratified, we've signed on to the African Continental Free Trade Area agreement, and we have ratified that agreement as well. So we're fully part of it, and we want to make Nigeria attractive to investors who want to take advantage of that free trade area, because it is the largest free trade area in the world as at the moment. So many people are interested in taking advantage of it, and we want to make Nigeria attractive to them. So we're setting up these free trade zones. We're trying to make sure that we have all the necessary infrastructure in place for these zones so that people can just come, set up their factories, start to produce, and start to export. Nigeria is working hard. There's a committee to which I belong. The Minister of Finance belongs to that committee. It is chaired by the Vice President, and it is for the single window for exports and imports, such that there's a quick and effective movement of goods from the ports to and from the ports. And these are some of the things that make Nigeria attractive. As you're aware, the Vice President also chairs the Presidential Ease of Doing Business Committee. The whole idea is to make business easy to in Nigeria, and a lot of work has gone on in that regard. And we continue to work hard to make sure that we make life easy for people who are coming to set up businesses here in Nigeria. And like I said, we have the largest market. There is a lot of attraction for our market, but we want to take advantage of that market as well by making sure that not only are people buying the goods, but that our people are benefiting by making the goods as well that are being bought by our people. So we are working hard in that direction, yes.
Well, thank you so much, Otumba Adebayo, Honorable Minister of Trade and Investment. The Honorable Minister of Finance seems as if you really want to react to that, but let me just put it this way. The summit's final declaration says about already $3 billion will be issued to African countries by the IMF to help boost imports, which you talked about. And of course, you're part of that committee, Import-Export Committee, and this will be tripled in due course. Are we not really looking at this gesture as trying to reinforce the Nigerian status of being an importer nation than exporter nation? given the fact that we should be able to have some more shock absorbers to absorb such shocks whenever they come next in trying to boost our economies through export and not imports?
So the 33.6 billion US dollars is not meant to be just for imports and exports. Is to infuse liquidity into our countries. So each country, depending on its priorities, will decide what to do with it. But the meeting also reinforced the request that we made to add an additional minimum of 100 billion US dollars, which will be on lent to us. This 33.6 is actually our SDR, so we own it as African country, but it's very small compared to the funding gap that we have. So this 100 billion US dollars is going to be also provided to us, and the discussion is around how will we use it. So it will be for health, it will be for education, it will be for us to be able to fund development finance institutions so that they can fund the development of private businesses in our country. If I may, on the issue of the guarantee, one of the asks that we made is to have, as part of the use of the SDRs, develop a new financial institution that will be like a refinancing institution for the African continent. And so it's like a repo institution that will help to produce some kind of a safeguard or guarantee, if you like, that reduces our risks when we go out to borrow. So whether it is the sovereign or a private investor from Nigeria or from any African countries that goes out now to the international capital market, we borrow at high cost. Whereas countries like Greece, whose economy is very, very weak compared to Nigeria, will go and borrow at a much lower cost in the same market because they have in Europe such a financial institution. So we're trying to get that to happen. And if it does, it will mean we can access financing at cheaper costs. And this means both Nigeria as a sovereign, but also businesses in Nigeria. So on the issue of guarantees that you mentioned, there wasn't really an outcome that says that countries will provide guarantees to businesses. In Nigeria, we have tried giving those guarantees, and the experience wasn't a good one. For example, in the power sector, we gave guarantees to two generating companies that assured them that whatever they produce, we will pay for. So we're ending up paying for power that is produced that we have not used because the transmission system is not able to uptake all the power, and then worse still, the distribution system is not able to consume the power. So we're paying for whatever gap is not collected by them. So it could be a good incentive for investments, and every investor that is now coming in the power sector in Nigeria wants that kind of guarantee. But it has hit us so hard that we have resisted issuing any more of such guarantees, unless, of course, the situation changes. Unless, of course, if we have this kind of refinancing institutions, that will be the ones that will intervene to provide those kind of instruments, not Nigeria as a sovereign.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Finance. Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, let's back up a bit. Sometimes I wonder, are we able to catch our breath against the experience of a number of these summits with the big powers? The Chinese have their meetings with Africa. The Indians have their meetings with Africa, even though now they are, in a sense, hobbled by the catastrophe of COVID-19. There was also Sochi, that's the Russians, had their meeting with a number of developing countries. Saudi Arabia also had theirs, and there were all commitments. And I'm sure on a few occasions we've also had you on our program Good Morning Nigeria to review these meetings. So I mean, Africa is a wonderful bride, but I mean, who then is the right suitor, and then who do we go to? In the end, to say, look, all right, this is what we're going to pick, and then run with.
Well, you make a good point, and it's something that is that preoccupies Africa. Actually, these number of countries. First of all, just the idea of one country and a whole continent, and what that implies. So the African Union, at the level of African Union, this is being debated. And what has actually been decided is that they should engage more with a group. You know, the African Union has a troika system. So that's the outgoing chairman, president of the union, the actual and the incoming. And that where we have these kinds of meetings, rather than the whole continent going, you know, it should be a sort of a representation of the continent. Can go about 3 presidents representing these countries to discuss these issues. And similarly, when it's you know, a regional grouping like the European Union, then also decide on how they should be engaged. So to rationalize it, so that there, as you say, you know, that there will be concrete deliverables, identified deliverables, and how to implement those. You know, what you come out, the outcomes of those conferences and those meetings, to give them meetings so that they will not just be talk shops, you know, and stuff like that. But you're right, you know, it's something that is being assessed, evaluated, and debated at the continental AU level. And also, of course, you know, people say in a big country like Nigeria, for instance, you know, should not necessarily be part of that kind of a grouping. You know, maybe the smaller countries that have, you know, specific issues that one country could address, could attend to them. But yeah, well, these are political issues, really. Yeah.
But the president, honorable minister, the president had a lot of, you know, audience with other presidents and, of course, Nigerians while in France at the summit. And, of course, these were all meant towards, aimed towards having better, you know, relationship in terms of trying to get Nigeria developed first, and, of course, other countries in Africa. One of such is the audience with the Ethiopian president on the sidelines of the summit. And of course, he advocated strategic cooperation, that is, amongst African states towards confronting both internal and continental challenges for prosperous Africa. What's the import of that?
Well, first and foremost, you know, Mr. President has a big, is highly respected by the African countries. Nigeria also is. And most countries want Nigeria to be front and center, to play a role in most issues on the continent, you know. And so, for instance, the meeting with Ethiopia, as you know, Ethiopia is facing a number of challenges. They have almost a civil war situation with the Tigrayan province. They have a border issue with, you know, with Sudan. And you have the grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam that they're building on the Nile that, of course, is causing serious trouble with Egypt and Sudan. You know, and they all want Nigeria, and they all want Mr. President to be part of this, finding a solution to that. And it's the same with all the issues around the continent, be they West Africa, Central Africa, Southern Africa, you know. And so the import of that, of course, is that, you know, Nigeria has an important role to play in Africa, but of course we have our own internal challenges, you know, so we have to balance, not spread ourselves, of course, you know, too wide, as much as we want to, you know, help Africa address all the issues confronting it, economic and security-wise, you know. 2021 was supposed to be, well, 2020 actually, was supposed to be the year of the silencing of the guns on the African continent, no more conflicts. This was a part of the AU, you know, 2030 agenda, a roadmap, and and Nigeria is expected to play a role in all that. So, you know, in Paris, Mr. President met with a number of leaders, African leaders, and you know, listened, and we will, you know, develop strategies to address some of those issues. With Chad, for instance, tomorrow, in fact, we're having a summit meeting here in Abuja, inviting about 6 presidents who will be here tomorrow to now look at the situation in Chad. So Mr. President has his work cut out for him. He's he's playing a role in stabilizing the continent, and also playing a role in trying to push for the African economic renaissance.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Back again to the Honorable Minister of Finance. What will the expanded special drawing rights and debt relief mean for Nigeria's fiscal regime?
Well, first of all, it means added liquidity, and liquidity that is going to come at a very, very low cost, and we will be negotiating also very long tenors. So it will come as a fiscal relief for us. We might, if the other aspect, which is the added 100 billion, comes through finally, it means also we'll be able to recapitalize our development finance institutions, infuse liquidity into them so that they can do more in terms of supporting the private sector and even government in our development strides. It will also give us an opportunity to renegotiate some of the existing debts that we have. Some we might be able to maybe exit some of the debts that are really costly and short tenured, to replace them with this longer, easier financing that is coming in. So it will be a good fiscal relief for us.
I wouldn't know whether if you were in the country at the time, but there seem to have been some bewildered reactions to the request to the Senate to approve some new loans for some foreign loans amounting to some 6 point something or 8 point something billion US dollars.
6.1.
6.1. Could you explain that to our viewers in the context of what we're discussing? Yes.
Each of our national budgets, and the 2021 budget is not an exception, is financed by internally generated revenues, financing items such as when we sell any assets, but also from borrowing. And this borrowing is approved in the 2021 to be 50% local, 50% foreign. So the foreign component of the borrowing is that 6.1 billion US dollars. So it's already been approved by the National Assembly, but the requirements of the Debt Management Act requires us that we go to the National Assembly again and get a resolution of the Assembly to be able to proceed for the external borrowing component. So the borrowing is the 6.1 billion US dollars is to finance the 2021 budget. We're already implementing the local component of it, but we need the approval of the Assembly to be able to go out for the external borrowing component. So it's for financing the 2021 budget.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Let's return to our Lagos Network Center with the Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. Honorable Minister Atumba Niyi Adebayo. Well, the same question that I posed to the Honorable Minister of Finance, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, I want to ask. We've sometimes had a number of roadshows asking investors to come into the country. Sometimes, yes, they do come up here, but they are unable, to set up base and then get on with their productive activities. What, in your opinion, we need to do more to keep attracting and retaining the interests of these foreign investors, as well as, of course, stimulating local investment?
And if I may also add here, Honorable Minister, you mentioned Donoflax being a France-Nigerian company owned by a Nigerian, and of course, we've spoken with him and talked with him and then tried to see the possibility of having to bring him to Nigeria here. Now, these are good examples and glad tidings and good news we really want to hear. What more efforts are there to make such come back home finally and open branches outside instead of open branches in Nigeria? Open branches in Nigeria.
So I think there was a technical hitch there. Could you?
Yeah, we're talking about trying to see the possibility of bringing in more investment into the country, looking at what really transpired at Africa-France Summit, and indeed what the takeaways were, especially in relation to your ministry. You mentioned one of Flax, one of Nigeria's, one of the companies in France owned by a Nigerian. And you really had a discussion with him, and he may be coming here to come and get a branch. We were talking about seeing how we'll be able to make this kind of Nigerians, and indeed those at home, establish industries here and have branches outside instead of having, main companies outside and then having branches in the country.
Like I said, basically what we're doing is we're trying to create the enabling environment for them to come and do business here. To make it easy for people to do business, we need to provide special economic zones, which we're working on. Like I pointed out earlier, we are making sure that these special economic zones have the required infrastructure that will make it easy for people to set up factories here in Nigeria. Despite what people think, factories are being set up in Nigeria every day. In fact, today, the reason why I'm in Lagos today is because I'm here to go and commission a chemicals factory in Ilupeju, which has just been set up, and they are producing fluids to be used in the oil and gas industry. So people are coming, people are expressing that interest, and we are working with them to see to it that we create an enabling environment for them to set up these companies here in Nigeria. We have people are interested in coming here. We're working on incentives for them to attract them, to make Nigeria a more attractive place for them. We're working hand in hand with my colleague, the Minister of Finance, to see to it that we provide adequate import duty regimes for them to bring in their machinery and equipment. So a lot of work is going on. We're working with the Central Bank of Nigeria as well, who have been very cooperative, especially with regards to importation of machinery, for foreign exchange, access to foreign exchange for importation of machinery. So a lot of work is going on in that direction, and it is yielding dividends.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. We have a number of tweets that have come in from our viewers. Of course, we are dealing with two topics today. The first segment related to the tribute to the late Chief of Army Staff and senior military officers who died in the plane crash on Friday. And of course, we're also having still the conversation on the France-Africa Summit. Nadabo, we'll quickly just go through some of those tweets, first on the tributes, and then return to the tweets on the summit. Delay Jack Solomon says, a call on the members of the armed forces to not allow this tragic incident, that's the air crash, to dampen their spirits and resolve to bring an end to terrorism in Nigeria.
And Chris Simmons says, I was shocked and couldn't believe it when I heard the tragic news on Friday evening. I burst into tears and I wept in secret. There are seasoned families who will take over. It's so sad indeed, really indeed. Rest in peace, great military actions.
Kenny has this tweet. I pray Almighty God forgive the departed souls, but the Nigerian government should ensure that families of the victims never regret what has happened. Supreme price should equally come with supreme compensation.
That is Monday. Oyok says it's just one death too many indeed. I think it's time we examine the state of our military aircrafts and the skyworthiness.
Usman Banu Kantu, indeed a painful exit of patriots and a big vacuum created. We hope the death of the officers will not demoralize those who are on the battlefield, but rather enable them sustain the onslaught and win.
Festus Akim Boyewa says, thanks to all the departed military officers for the dedication and love for our country. May God comfort their families.
All right, so those are the ones we're going to take in the meantime from the tribute to the officers who passed away last Friday. Now, these are tweets on the France-Africa Summit. Mutana Farouk says, foreign policy brings mutual relationship between a country and other countries. However, no foreign individual or group will build Nigeria except Nigerians. We should learn how to use our resources to develop ourselves.
Ogunle of Folabiadini says, it's not a shame for Nigeria to seek for international help. COVID-19 has affected our economy and we need all available help that we can get. I believe the leadership of the country can make the economy bounce back. God bless Nigeria.
All right, this is coming from Ibukun Onas, and this is a question that I think the Honorable Minister would, it's a comment the Honorable Minister should clarify because she spoke on it earlier, but there appears to be a misconception here. It says, Minister of Finance said the $100 billion will be used in health and education. Please, let her tell us exactly what area in education and health she wants to spend the money on. So clarify that. Yes.
Maybe briefly there about it.
You didn't say that, but clarify.
So the $100 billion is being agreed to be provided to African countries. It's not just to Nigeria, but part of the conditions might be that there should be significant spending in health, in education, and also in climate change-related issues. Not that it is only those areas, but the countries that are providing these resources are saying there must be special attention given to those, and then it's not all for Nigeria. Right. I wish it was all for Nigeria.
Oh, okay, okay. So you got it now. The $100 billion is not all for Nigeria. It's for the entire African continent, and Nigeria will have to take our own bite from that. On that note, we would like to thank our guests who will be with us in this second segment. The Honorable Minister of Health, Dr. Sage Hanire, was with us via Zoom. From our Lagos Network Center, we're joined by Otumba Niyi Adebayo, Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. And here in the Abuja studios, His Excellency Geoffrey Onyama, Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Hajia Zainab Ahmed, Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. So that's it for us today on Good Morning Nigeria. We'd like to thank you for tuning in. The program returns tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, do take care of yourself. I am Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Yusuf Nadabusu. Bye-bye.